town Christiansted, a place of commerce, politics, and leisure. It's a place where one can find almost any treat to satisfy the palate, or that special item found nowhere else. It's the Big Island's eastern town, and it's a town rich in history.
But for many, the Christiansted town may be nothing more than a shopping district or a site on the way to work. And while I'm sure many residents and visitors have visited this site on numerous occasions, how many of them have actually taken the time out to learn more about this area's history? Do you know where it got its name from or when it was built? Well, today we're going to explore these questions and many more as we rediscover the east side of our town, starting with this yellow massive structure behind me. Come on, let's go. Fort Christiansted, an unmistakable landmark in the Christiansted town. Its size and bright color makes it almost impossible to miss. Built in the 1700s by Danes, this fort served to protect. Now it stands as a gateway to the past.
Well, the fort was built mainly for harbor defense and also to make sure that the large slave population on the island of St. Croix was kept in check. The Danish government kept a garrison here. They also had infantry as well as cavalry. The fort is a beacon, it's an attraction. Many people from all over the world come to visit it as well as our school children. Fort Christiansted has seen several historical visitors to this area. When we talk about the emancipation of slavery in 1848, this is where General Governor Peter von Scholten had General Bodo in prison until he was sent off to Trinidad. Alexander Hamilton's mother, Rachel, was incarcerated here for a period of time. We have dedicated the cell that she served her time in, and you can see that on the tour as well. And in the 1980s, we had then Vice President George Bush came and paid a visit. I was given the honor of conducting the tour myself.
Hi.
Janisha.
Hi, I'm Annabelle Colonna. I'll be your tour guide for today. I want to welcome to Christiansted National Historic Site.
Thank you.
Let's go this way.
When you first walk into the Christiansted Fort, it may not appear that impressive. Don't get me wrong, it is a charming fort, but you really don't appreciate the historical value of the fort until you take a tour and learn exactly what took place within these walls.
Mr. Colon, could you tell us a little bit about the fort?
Sure, I could tell you a little bit about the fort. I could also tell you the name of the park is Christiansted National Historic Site. It was established in 1952, and it consists of 7 acres. Now, within the 7 acres, we have 6 different buildings. Now, the name of the fort is Fort Christiansted, and Vern is another way of saying defense in Danish. The fort was built between 1738 and 1749, and it was built to enforce the law that was given by customs and also to protect the harbor and the shippings from private sub-privateers. Now, 80% of the fort is made out of yellow bricks, which is the one that you see on the ground. And the other 20% is made out of wood and the doors and the shutters. Okay?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the first ones I'm going to show you is the detention cells. We have 2 here, and we also have 2 behind us. But I always show the visitors this one because this one still has the original floor. And you can see the carvings on the wood. Now, those carvings were made by people that were in the detention cell during the Danish time. The purpose of this cell was to either for people that was waiting for trials to go to court, or slaves that ran away from the owners that were recaptured, that were brought into the fort and put in these cells until the owners came back for them. Now, at a certain time after, if they had caught anybody in town drunk, they would bring them into the fort and put them in here to spend the night.
So how long, well, other than those who were found in town and left for a night, how long of a period are people left in there?
I'm not too probably until the owners came back for them, and after the time up to certain, when the court duty was up, they were put in here.
Was it like one person?
There were more than one person in here. And as you can see, there's also about 4 feet high, so you can imagine Anybody over that height, they either have to be sitting down on the ground or laying down most of the time.
Wow, that's serious.
It's serious.
And if you think this holding cell is bad, wait until you see the dungeon.
Okay, this is the dungeon, and this is where they put the worst offenders. An example of a worst offender, either bringing down a cane field or striking a white person. The window that you see here, before 1835, was only a 9-inch square, so you can imagine the air and that light coming in here. Now the little cell that you see behind you, that was called the black hole, and the reason it was called a black hole because it doesn't have any windows, and there was the door to be closed, to close anything that was put in there, and that cell was used for solitary confinement.
Tell me a little bit about the conditions, like about how many people were in here.
Well, we don't have any records of exactly how many, but there were more than one person in here. And the people that were put in here from months to a year. Now, when they did get fed, and one of the things is they had to go to the restroom, and they would do it right here. So you mean between that and the sweat and all that, you can imagine the stench in here. Okay.
You can see they could barely stand up in here.
I know. And I have to be like this most of the time I come down here.
Wow.
It's definitely not a place you want to be in for any extended period of time.
Now we're standing in the room where the mother of one of our founding fathers was kept. Pretty amazing when you think about it.
You do know which Alexander we're talking about, right? Alexander Hamilton, born 1757 on the island of Nevis, moved to St. Croix with his mother, father, and brother when he was 9, left the island at age 17 for school, and would go on to become a U.S. Army officer, lawyer, the first Secretary of Treasury under the nation's first president, George Washington, creator of the Federalist Party, and oh yeah, among other things, one of 2 chief authors of the Federalist Papers, the most important interpretation of the U.S. Constitution? That's right, that Alexander Hamilton. And his mother was jailed in this room.
What happened was when she got here with her mother, she was kind of forced into getting married to a much older person than she was. After a while, she wasn't too happy, and she started doing things. The guy wasn't too happy about it, so he thought that by putting her in jail for a couple of months, she would shape up. But after she got out of jail, she stayed here on the island for a couple of months, and then she moved over to Nevis.
Okay,
to St. Kitts.
She was here for about how long?
A couple of months.
A couple of months.
Okay. Now, when she went over to St. Kitts, that's when she met Alexander Hamilton's father.
Okay.
And from there, they moved over to Nevis. Alexander was born in Nevis, and then he came here as a little guy. Okay?
Slaves and prisoners were not the only ones kept at the fort. Of course, soldiers also had their barracks here.
This is the barracks, and the barracks is where the soldiers slept, and the soldiers that slept here were in charge of protecting the the fort, and the island from slave rebellion and invasion from other nations. We set up the room so you could have an idea of how the room would have been when the soldiers were outside doing their daily duties. The small boxes that you see in front of the beds, that's where they kept the personal belongings, and the closets, that's where they kept their uniforms. Now the soldiers were from between 5'4" and 5'5". They had up to about 45 artillery soldiers in the fort. And away from the fort, they also had a barracks, and those barracks had 170 soldiers in the barracks.
Now this is the only way for boats to access the Christiansted harbor. In the event that pirates or others tried to attack, these cannons stood ready to fire.
Okay, this is the water battery. These cannons that you see up here were only used for water defense. The cannons are weigh up to almost 4,700 pounds.
Wow.
So what they did, they needed 6 soldiers to operate these cannons. So what they did, they would put 1 soldier on each wheel. One would go up to the front and put the cannonball and the gunpowder through the cannon's mouth. And the other one, the last one, would come up, light up the fuse when the cannon's ready to be fired, and he also will act as the captain. Now the cannons that you see here could fire 1.25 miles from here is more or less where the reef is, or a little bit farther than the reef. Now, besides these cannons up here, they also had 2 other locations with cannons. At the entrance of the harbor, they also had a little fortress with cannons there. Hotel on the Quay also had a cannon with a little fortress with cannons. And then this one up here. So they had like a triangular system protecting the harbor and the fort. So if anybody tried to attack, they would fire the 2 outside cannons first. And if they still passed through, then the cannons up here would be fired. Now, these were only used for water defense. The crown that you see here is to let you know that they were made in a royal factory, and the L is for a town in Norway called Ludvig, because Norway and Denmark were working together at that time.
Okay, approximately how many cannons does the fort have?
Then we have a lot, but I don't know exactly how much we have. Okay. Any questions?
And where did the ammunition for the cannons come from? Well, it came from this room situated right below the cannons.
This is what a typical cannonball looks like. They were used as deadly weapons back in the 1700s and 1800s to destroy pirate ships. Today, they're used simply as decorations for the fort.
There are thousands of cannonballs that still remain. Why so many? Well, let's just say that the fort never really defended itself.
The fort saw action twice, but not a single shot was fired from it in its defense. Both times the British came in the early 1800s, and the commander of the fort surrendered without firing a shot.
These cannonballs here are 18 pounds. This is what they use for the main defense, where the big cannons up on the water battery, and it will propel by black powder. I'm going to show the room I'm going to show you next is the gunpowder magazine. But before I show you that, let me show you something here. With this one small window here, one on the other side, and if you look inside, you won't be able to see anything inside. The reason they did that is so nobody will try to light up a match and try to blow up the gunpowder magazine, because if they did that, it will level down the whole fort. So by the time they light up the match and go like this, by just swinging the thing back and forth, it's going to turn off.
Okay.
Okay?
Great.
Let's go inside. Okay, the barrels that you see on both sides, that's where they kept the gunpowder. They also have small barrels to move back and forth. The reason for the wooden floor, since they're working with gunpowder, they won't have any sparks. Instead of using a metal shovel, they will use the wooden shovels like the ones they have right there on the wall. And the boxes that you see there were used to prepare the ammunitions, but they prepared the ammunitions in the other room where I'm going to show you in a couple of minutes. Okay. And if you see the wall right in front of you, you see that little opening right there? Yeah. That they did that, and the 2 windows that I showed you first, so the air could circulate, because they needed the gunpowder to stay dry. If it got too wet, they won't be able to use it. And as a matter of fact, that wall that you see there is 13 feet thick. So this is the thickest part of the fort. So the fort, whenever they're attacked, it will hold up before it starts crumbling, and also to support the big cannons on the water battery. Okay, this is the arsenal room. This is where they kept the equipment for the big cannons, and they also kept their muskets here. The muskets, the way those operate, they had to put everything from the top, the gunpowder and the ammunition, and then ram it down. The little boxes that you see right next to them, that's where they kept the ammunition and the gunpowder. The wooden the swords are on top. But what you're looking at right now is a reproduction of what used to be here before.
About how many muskets were stored in here?
Should be a little bit over 20.
Maybe over 20 were just muskets and swords,
and
nothing else?
And the equipment for the big cannons.
Okay.
Right over here, the first one, for example, have 2 different ends. The one end is used for cleaning, the other one is used to push the cannonball back, all the way back to the cannon. The one with the coils, after they fired the cannons a couple of times, if they wanted to clean it inside, they would use that to scrape the gunpowder that stayed inside. The one with the scoops, and the way that would work, they would put the gunpowder in a sack, put it in that stick with a scoop, and shove it all the way to the back of the cannon, and then turn it upside down like this. So when they pull the stick back out, the gunpowder stays inside. Those little sticks they have sticks like those too if they want to change the angle of the cannon to fire at different angles. The table that you see here, this is where they also prepare the ammunitions for the big cannons upstairs. The boxes that you saw in the other room, they will bring those boxes over here, put 2 cannonballs and the gunpowder, seal it, and take it upstairs. That way they don't have to be running up and down the stairs to be getting the gunpowder or the cannonball. And the table was also used as a work table. If the muskets weren't working, they would bring them over here, take them apart, fix them, and put them back together again.
Okay, and they look heavy.
They're pretty long, so they had to get a good feeling for it and, and practice how to use it.
And this room, the best preserved room in the fort.
Okay, this is the officer's day room. This is where the sergeant will come and do a daily report of what he did during the day. And when he's not around, the junior officers that were off duty will spend the time here either talking to each other, or reading books, or play games. Okay?
So in the evenings, they were found in the barracks room, and then here during the day. That's
Right. So they probably had soldiers doing night shift also.
Okay.
Like, for example, the red center, the little box that you see in front, they had a different soldier on guard for 24 hours.
Okay.
So they probably had soldiers working in the daytime and other soldiers working in the nighttime.
Okay, and why is it sealed right now?
We seal it right now because this whole section has air conditioning. We don't want the air to escape.
Okay, and what kind of contents do you have inside? So you have...
We have the jacket that you see right here on the chair. That's part of a Danish uniform.
Okay.
And that's an original jacket.
Great.
And by just looking at that jacket, you can see the height and the
Yes.
build of the person.
They were short.
They were short.
That was a very interesting tour. However, the history does not end here. There's still plenty more to learn in this area of town.
Christiansted National Historic Site was established by the Secretary of the Interior in 1952. The 7-acre site, which consists of Fort Christiansted, the steeple building, the customs house, the scale house, and the former slave trading compound, more commonly known as the old post office, was set aside by the Department of Interior to interpret the Danish West Indies way of life from 1733 to 1917, when the islands were sold to the United States for $25 million in gold. Christiansted was the heart of commerce, and the scale house served as the way station. The original scale is still on the floor. It's over 180 years old. It's on display currently. And this is where the planters would bring in their crop to be shipped to either back to Europe or to the United States. And this is where the weights and measures took place, right here at the scale house. When you look at the custom house, it was actually the first Danish post office. The top floor was the post office for the Danish government, and the bottom floor, or the first floor, was actually where you paid your custom duties. Now, the old post office, or the Danish West India Guinea Company warehouse, is actually today the world's largest former slave trading compound under U.S. flag. We know from our records that over 50,000 enslaved Africans were sold from that building. The National Park Service has plans to restore that building so that on the first floor of that building we can do a slave trade museum.
We're standing outside the Steeple Museum, known to residents better as the Steeple Building or the Steeple Tower. Outside is a simple rectangular structure, but inside, come on, let's take a look.
Oh, let's go.
Wow.
Nice, isn't it?
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know about this.
Yeah, the building you're in right now is called the Steeple Building, and the building goes back to 1753. The tower was added between 1794 and 1796. That was one of the first Lutheran churches that was brought over to the island. The building, this mirror right here will give you a good idea how the church was set up. So, the altar was right here in the middle, the pulpit was by this door, and the box that you see with people inside, that was called the governor's box, and that was for him and his family, and it would have been on that side of the room. Okay. Now, the building was used as a Lutheran church until 1831. Now, during 1825 and 1827, it got damaged by several hurricanes. The people didn't want to spend much money repairing the building, so they got the one on the King Street with the permission of the King of Denmark. So what they did, they moved some of the stuff that they had here, they moved it over to the church. For example, the altar that was here, they're still using it in the Lutheran church on King Street. Now, after 1831, the building had different functions. It was a military depot, a hospital, a school, a town hall, and a Sunday and public school.
Okay, and about how many people can this building hold?
Close to about 100. Now, the pews that you see here are not the original, the reproductions of what used to be here before. And one of the things that the church did was, in order to get funds to keep the church running, they will rent the pews to people that will come to church. Now, the people that couldn't afford to rent the pews, they had benches on the side for them. Okay?
Okay, so everything else, well, the floor is still...
This is still the original floor. Okay. The structure of the fort is still the same. The only thing that we replaced in this building has been the roof. Now, just to give you a different dimension of the building, the width is 26.8 feet, the length is 77.5 feet. And if you want to measure from the floor all the way up to the ceiling, is 18 feet.
Thank you so much, Mr. Colon, for this fabulous tour.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.
It was truly a great experience.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So much history, and it's all on such a small 7-acre property. I had a great time today, and I hope you did too. If you haven't already, take some time out to explore and learn more about this familiar location. And always remember to cherish your home, cherish this beautiful island, but most of all, cherish each other. We'll see you next time.